Good morning. I'm John Ellsworth, founder of Success Strategies Incorporated and the creator of the Success Strategies Advantage. And I want to welcome you to today's presentation, which I've entitled, Are You Currently Vulnerable? Sounds scary, doesn't it? When we think about the term vulnerable in terms of finances, which is the area that I work in the most, it's usually not a good thing. If you're financially vulnerable, it's kind of scary. That's not a good thing. But I read a recent article in Inc. magazine by Marcel Schwantz, where the author talks about the value of being vulnerable. And you stop and think about the value of being vulnerable. It sounds kind of scary, doesn't it? But what the author is referring to is being vulnerable with your team, for example. Not necessarily always having all the answers. That can be a good thing for you and your team. Talk about the benefits. Dr. Brene Brown stated that vulnerability itself is the birthplace of three things. Number one, innovation. Number two, creativity. And number three, change for the better. So she says that it's necessary for leaders to connect with other people and inspire those others by making themselves somewhat vulnerable. Not being above being vulnerable is probably a better way of saying it. My next point is that vulnerability, we often think of it as a sign of weakness, don't we? If you're vulnerable, you can be attacked. I mean, it's just scary, right? Well, the reality is vulnerable is not necessarily just a sign of weakness. As Dr. Brene Brown went on to say, and I quote, "I cannot find a single incident of courage that is not completely underpinned by vulnerability." Think about the last time you saw someone do something brave, and I guarantee you vulnerability will be there. End of quote. I think that's a pretty powerful quote, a pretty powerful statement, because if you put yourself in the case of someone breaking up a robbery, for example, I mean, the person that broke up the robbery, hopefully successfully, and no one got hurt, they were vulnerable, were they not? Could they not have gotten shot or pistol whipped or something? Scary, isn't it? They were vulnerable, but it was an act of bravery. So it was underpinned. They got beyond the vulnerability that they faced and did something brave. Same with a policeman intervening on some crime scene. They're vulnerable too, are they not? We've seen many of them get injured or worse yet, killed in the last 5 years. But again, they're vulnerable, but they've stepped beyond and above that and become brave with better outcomes as a result, I might add. So my next point is that vulnerability is really about building trust, isn't it? For example, isn't it a great way to build trust with your key employees, the people you really depend on to run your business? And I think it's always better if you somehow exhibit some vulnerability, some degree of vulnerability, where they will start thinking on their own. And I want to add that I know this is so unbusinesslike, but it's okay not to have all the right answers. It's okay as a business leader not to have all the answers. Sometimes, and I find this in my consulting work, sometimes it's far better to be asking the right questions. And a likely outcome of that, in the case of your key employees, is that you will lead them to step up and assist you. So I will summarize by saying this. Being vulnerable often is a sign of maturity and a sign of positive leadership. So as in the previous point, being vulnerable can help build the strength and depth of your team. So vulnerability is not a bad thing. It has benefits, as Dr. Brown pointed out, because it helps others to be more brave, step up, come up with new ideas. And it's about building trust with these key employees, as I said earlier. I think that's a very positive thing and will help them to step up and assist you to make your business even more successful. So again, being vulnerable, often a sign of maturity and positive leadership, and it can often help to build the strength and depth of your management team. I want to thank you for listening. I'm John Ellsworth, founder of Success Strategies Incorporated and the creator of the Success Strategies Advantage. I want want to thank you for listening today. Thank you very much.